Howdy, howdy. Welcome, guys. We've got another special guest today jumping on here because my sister is on vacation. Oh, she's at a game, a Giants versus, hi, Holly, a Giant versus Cubs game, which she's a Giants fan. Hey, Holly. This is Holly.
Hello.
I was just saying the reason Whitney's not here is she's at a Cubs versus Giants game somewhere, and she's a Giants fan, but her husband is a Cubs fan.
So it's going to be a really fun day in their household.
It totally is. And they're
One
bringing
way or the
Dylan, my nephew, and it's always a fun thing about who gets to put the jersey on him, like what jersey will he be wearing? Remains to be seen. We'll wait for the Facebook pictures.
Maybe they'll switch out at halftime depending on who's up.
Oh, that would be
Wait, they don't have halftime in baseball.
I totally went with that because I have no idea. I was like, you're right. Totally.
The seventh inning stretch. Yeah. That's the thing.
You guys, this is Holly, and she's a good friend of both mine and Wit's, and she's stepping in for us, bless her heart, to talk a little bit today. You guys, we're talking a little bit about balance in our life, what that looks like, what it doesn't look like, what it feels like, how to change it, how to shift it, all the things, right? Just kind of surrounding balance. And I thought Holly is the perfect chick to come and fill these shoes on this particular subject because she's a brand new mommy for the first time. And so I don't know what disrupts balance more than new babies. And you can kind of talk a little bit about that. But before we jump into the context, you guys know the drill. I have to do all this that my sister usually does. First of all, if you don't know why the heck we're going live, we do this every single Wednesday at 1:30 Pacific time, 3:30 Central time. And it's a little thing we do called What Do We Know with Wen and Wit. And our goal is to bring perspective, inspiration, and education about some hot topics and try to meet in the middle somewhere, just gain some insight. I really feel like there's always two sides to any given thing, and we can learn so much through discussion. So that's the goal here. And I'm the Wendy part of this equation, and I am a wife. I am a mom. I have 3 babes. I'm a business owner, a blogger, an author, and a speaker, and I live in Middle Tennessee. And who are you?
I am not Whitney. I am Holly, but another blonde mom, so you probably won't even notice I'm somebody else. I'm also a wife. I am newly a mom of this little guy who's deciding to start moving from his nap.
Oh, of course he is.
Right on cue. And I'm also a business owner. I'm a dental hygienist by profession, in life, a generalized adventure seeker, and I'm coming at you guys from Lincoln, California.
Yay, and we're so grateful that you're here. And you guys, the reason why we came up with this concept, if you are a first timer here, is, my sister and I were just talking about these different topics we often do. We live far apart from each other, and we thought, we're always trying to meet in the middle, like actually meet physically in the middle of the country, through the phone or the internet or whatever. But also just, again, gaining perspective here. And we feel like if we can make a difference, we must, and we can, so we must. So that's what we're doing here. And like I said, today we're talking about balance. And is it ever possible to actually achieve balance in your life? And I know, Hall, if you have to go pick up that baby at any given time, you just go do it. Because, hey.
We've got a couple more minutes.
Okay, of squirming.
Because that'll throw you off your balance, right? I'm like, yeah, I can do this thing.
You think you've got it all squared away. So we're going to jump in with some audience participation. I would love for you to hear if you guys feel like you have achieved balance in your life. Do you feel like you're in a season of balance in your life? Throw some comments down here. Oh no, I made the comments go away. There we go. They're back. Throw some comments down here. I see y'all jumping on here. I'd love to know if you guys feel like you're in a state of balance. And just for missing my sister's sake, and if you've watched this before, you know that she loves herself some definitions, and she loves like facts and history and stuff. Hey guys, And so I just want to throw the definition of balance out here just as a starting point. It is a condition in which different elements are equal or in the correct proportions. So, gosh, if that's just not like, obviously, I know that's like a technical definition, like actually balancing a scale, right? But if you want to broaden that to balance within your life, right? It's the same definition, a condition in which different elements of your life, let's say, are equal or in the correct proportion. And kind of jumping in again with another audience participation, Morgan says no, she has not achieved balance in her life. Do you, with that definition in play, what would it look like to have your definition of perfect balance in your life? That's my second question. So Christy's weighing in here. She thinks she has good balance in her life, but at the same time, she feels like she runs crazy most days. Okay, that's so great to hear. That makes me feel like a normal person. I think that's so many of us, right? And I know Christy is also a business owner. So yeah, that can really throw balance out of whack. So in terms of what would it look like to have perfect balance, I think sometimes the expectations are that we have equal parts work, equal parts play, equal parts rest. And sometimes that sets us up for failure because obviously I think anyone living on the planet could safely say that's an unrealistic expectation. What do you think about that, Miss Holly?
Even though like the word balance in a like application to like the human life makes me so uncomfortable because you're like, wait, there's like, show me one human who's like, for sure, all the balance for longer than one day. I don't really think that it exists on a human level in a textbook sense of the part of the definition that's like all things given equal parts, but probably more so like the correct proportions.
Yeah.
And I don't think that balance really has to do much with like equality as much as it does that like everything has been given the time or the space that it deserves for your satisfaction. And
totally,
I think that varies very much so person to person.
Sure, absolutely. It's interesting you say that. I'm recalling, and I should have written this down specifically so I don't butcher it, but there's a quote by Joel Parker, Linda Parker's husband, in his book, The Leader in the Mirror, that you can get on Amazon, that says balance is when all the priorities or all the important things in your life take priority at a certain time. That's a terrible quote. That's a terrible way. I'm butchering that. But that concept of everything that's important to you takes priority at some point, right? So, and I think you're totally dead on that it is defined person to person, right? For me, maybe with that in mind, it looks a little bit like when I'm working my business, I'm fully present in my business. When I'm working or with my kids, I'm fully present with my kids, with my husband, fully present with my husband. That makes me feel balanced. And I think the part that makes me feel out of balance oftentimes comes into play when I'm trying to do all the things at once and nothing is taking priority. Everything is kind of washed into some like second half-assed attempt at it. Sorry to use a bad word. What do you think about that?
So I feel like you're actually describing or defining balance, at least for yourself, as presence.
Okay.
And, you know, like, I don't know if you even noticed you did that because it was like being present at work and being present. And it's almost like balance, at least for you, and that totally resonates, is like when each part gets its own space.
Sure.
Without being overridden or washed into by the other parts.
Yeah.
Making you feel divided.
Totally.
So
yes.
That's a cool way to
what
see
does
it.
Balance look like for you? How would you define it?
Again, that was one of those things where I was like trying this topic and I was like laughing, like, balance, come on, like this is funny. But I really do, I know the actual quote that you're talking about from Joel, and I think that was the first time that I heard a definition of balance that I was like, okay, yeah, like that makes sense. Like all the pieces get the right level of priority. And it's just, it's so interesting because even as you try to define it, I feel like it's so personal. I feel like that is absolutely a person to person thing. And it has to be based on your values.
Totally.
You know, because there's people out there who get to spend 24/7 with their family and might not feel balanced because they're seeking some, you know, exterior sense of accomplishment, or
so true.
Someone who's stuck all day at work and just drained because they're not like filling their bucket with the things that balance them.
Sure.
So as like rudimentary as a concept of like, let's balance this out. You're just like, how do I even?
Right.
How do I even?
Sure. That's so, you know, what you're describing, and I wrote in the notes here, balance versus normal. And like understanding that, I think sometimes this is, again, we've talked over these last couple of episodes about these terms, balance being one of them, that success being another one, where if you don't define it yourself, you don't know what you're even chasing down. You know, you don't even know what you're seeking, because balance oftentimes is thrust upon us as what's considered normal, which is, you know, I would say the average person, or the normal person, let's use that word because I feel like average can be derogatory. I don't mean it in a derogatory way. The normal schedule is, you know, that we go to work full time, and we're spending so much, such less time. That's not the right way to say that, but you know what I'm saying? We're not giving our best time, or we're getting our leftovers to the things that maybe matter most to us, right? And that's just normal. And so we feel like that's balance, right? Because that's what everybody does. That's what's expected. But again, if we don't define what balance is for ourselves, then we may just seek out what's normal and not necessarily what we desire to have in our life in that sense of balance. Am I saying things? Am I making sense?
Totally. All the sense. And it's totally just coming down to the, you know, normal. Is that what you want?
Sure.
For that person? Is that going to feel more like settling? Because I have the like suspicion about humanity that more often than not, complying with the normal, though, may be more comfortable or less judged or misinterpreted or misunderstood, isn't like fueling your life. You know, it's just happening.
Totally.
And even still doesn't feel balanced.
Right. And I think that,
but acceptable.
It's funny because we'll have, I talk to people all the time that are kind of dissatisfied with the status quo of their situation, and then adding something to their plate, you know, all of a sudden the words that are coming out of their mouth, I feel so out of balance. I feel so out of balance. You know, it's like, oh, that's so interesting. You know, like it's disruption, right, is what makes us feel that. So what we keep coming back to is balance is a perception issue, right? It's totally not even a perspective issue, but a perception issue of how do I feel right now? I'm feeling overwhelmed. Overwhelmed might almost be a synonym for balance in a lot of these situations, that you're feeling out of balance, you're feeling overwhelmed, right? What is that makes me feel like I'm not doing the things that are important to me, right? So it's a perception issue. And I wrote just some questions here in my notes. Is it a contentment issue? Is it a gratitude issue? Is it a pride issue? You know, like, are these some of the contributing factors to us seeking a false sense of balance, or, like you said, feeling out of balance? You know, or could those be some of the contributing factors? What are some of the things, as a next jumping off point, what are some of the things that throws you out of balance, or gives you that feeling of being out of balance?
It's so seasonal, you know, like I feel like there's times in your life where you're just going along and everything is pretty much the same, but you'll have that like internal, like intuitional, something is not right feeling, even though maybe from the outside it is. I mean, obviously changes that come in, somebody getting sick, new health issue, new work issue, new family issue, whatever, something like throwing a wrench in the system is probably something that feels like it's going to throw it out of balance.
New
but
jobs,
even just seasonal,
new schedules, new bosses. Sometimes it's your change. Sometimes it's other people's changes, like getting a new boss. You didn't change that. You didn't choose that necessarily, but It can throw you out of whack, can throw you out of balance. How has being a new mom thrown you out of balance? Because I think before you answer that, I think what we're talking about here is um, your normal being hijacked, right? Whether it's by your choice or not by your choosing. That's what throws us out of balance, I think, most frequently is when what we, again, going back to that word of normal, what we've settled into, it may not be balanced to begin with, but what we've settled into as normal gets hijacked. Then we start to use the word, I'm out of balance, I feel out of balance. And I'm like, oh, that's so funny. Were you balanced before, right? So what are some of the ways you have been thrown out of your normal or balance with a new baby?
Yeah, I was just talking to one of my mentors in my business about this yesterday. And I was like, you know what? The funniest things about this new baby situation is that the only things throwing me off are my expectations of what I thought it was going to look like. And
sorry, there's a fly attacking me.
Nice fly.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a big one.
It's a farm.
That's a Tennessee fly. And it's basically what I was saying to her is, you know, if you know me or you don't, I spend every day doing 50 different things and I'm 12 different places and I'm never home. Like home is not like home. Home is like where I sleep and then I leave to go do my life. I don't live here. And I have a baby who has reflux and colic. And so between the two things, I've genuinely left my house 10 times in the last 9 weeks.
Oh my word.
And for me, that's like shattering the space of normal. And honestly, the only way that I've been coping, and sure there's days that are a little bit harder than others, is just resetting my expectation. Like, this is how it needs to look right now. You know, perspective that this is not what it's going to look like forever. And perspective that, like, what else are you going to do about it but feel stressed? So here you are. What can you do here? But yeah, anyways, his whole early infancy conditions have been a total disruption to my normal of never being home. And now I'm always home and feel like I can't, I'll even go to leave and then there's puke everywhere and he's miserable. Aww. And I'm miserable and I'm not crying, you're crying. And, you know, all the things.
So you're a little out of your normal, right? Disruption.
Totally.
Yeah. Yep. So do you think, are you seeking in this season to return to your old normal, or are you defining a new normal, defining a new sense of balance?
Totally defining a new sense of balance, because I've come to the reality that what was normal before never can be. And I'm sure everyone here with a kid can say yeah, life's never going to be the same. And everyone says that before. And yeah, it's just, I think it's even for me being such a type A planner and wanting to know what everything's going to look like and how it's all going to trickle down. It's such an unknown of what and when this sort of new normal is going to take place and what it's going to look like. And that for me is another thing that feels really out of balance, because my normal or my comfort zone or my balance is predictability and stability and planning. And apparently kids don't care what your plan is and what time you need to leave the house and all the things.
They don't. They just don't get it. They will. They'll start to get it eventually. Yeah. That's so, I love what you said, because I'm going to jump ahead to how can we aim to achieve more balance. I think we know a million ways. We mentioned life seasons, different goals, change being the constant through all these different things. Change is the thing that disrupts the balance. Any kind of change, be it your choosing or being thrust upon you, change is the thing. That's the theme here. That disrupts balance, right? So how can we aim to achieve more balance in our life? And I think a big point, and somebody mentioned up here in the comments, who was it? It was Shiloh was talking about how she had never thought to define it for herself. That is an eye-opening concept to define balance for yourself, which I'm so glad that was helpful, because I think that's kind of the jumping off point is, well, what am I even seeking, right? Because if we don't know what the end goal is, if we don't know what we're desiring to feel and have in our life, then how are we going to ever achieve it? So thinking about that, what would that look like for you? And then you mentioned also changing your expectations, which I think is like probably, especially for a parent, a new parent, you may have to change your expectations daily, as we've been talking about all those things over the phone and such over the last couple of days. Changing your expectations, I think that's like the name of the game, right? You've got to change the whole game, because you're never going to achieve balance with the way that it is, because the world only spins forward, right? So if you're trying to reconstruct what was, like that's not the way the world works. We move forward. We have to seek out, okay, now that this thing has shifted, I can't have the thing I used to have. I can't have balance in the way that I used to have, or my normal's gone, or whatever. Coming to peace with that and changing your expectations of what that's going to look like. And we had a comment here. Christy mentioned that having stay-at-home moms have that guilt of not bringing in enough income, and working moms feel like they don't spend enough time with their kids, right? And that's hard to balance. That's totally probably one of the more common ones, is how do you balance that? And again, if your desire is to be home, then maybe you need to take that into consideration and change your expectations of what your normal could be like. Because if your desire is to be home, you could be. How do you step towards that balance, if that's the balance you desire in your life? And vice versa. If you love being at work and you feel very balanced in the time that you have at work and the time that you have at home, awesome. Your balance, your expectations are going to look very different than someone who doesn't do that. But I guess I want to encourage and empower you guys, those of you who feel like, if I could define balance for myself, I would make this change. Then make that change, right? Step into that, or at least explore that a little bit more about, if you are a stay-at-home mom and you desire to be back at work, or you desire, you feel like you're not contributing enough, or whatever that looks like. Think on that and define, like, okay, how can I achieve more balance? Because again, I think naming it is a big piece of it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to having your cake and eating it too. Sure. There's going to have to either be some level of compromise on the balance that you're feeling you're having. And everyone hates the word compromise, right?
Oh, that's a good one, though.
And so you're either going to have to compromise, or you're going to have to change it. You're going to have to make a choice to make a change, or it's just going to be what it is. And then you will have to live with those guilts of, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I wish I could contribute, or I'm a working mom, but I wish I could spend more time with my kids, because there are people out there who have both, but that's not normal.
Sure.
And so again, it's expectations, it's compromise, on all of that thing. And I think earlier you had mentioned, like, is it a pride thing? And I think that's so true. I think maybe even in both of those examples of the stay-at-home mom and the working mom, it could come down to a pride thing, or a normalcy thing, or an expectations thing, or, any number of things that, again, it's almost like that person's going to have to define it for themselves.
Totally. And it's interesting you said that, because there's so many books out and such a movement now that, like, this woman empowerment movement, which I'm all about, obviously. But like, on the flip side, if like, that women can work and women can chase down their dreams and women can have these huge goals and stuff. And, obviously I kind of stand for that. But on the same side, it's like, if that's not your balance, if that's not your desire, you also don't have to feel guilty for what's normalized in our culture. Like, yeah, it is normal for moms to work. If you don't desire that, you don't have to feel that guilt, right? Releasing that. So I think that's a part of it too, is releasing. But you mentioned compromise and change. And I think that's what it comes down to. You get one or the other. In order to achieve your definition of balance, you either have to compromise on what your definition is, or you have to change the way that you're doing your life to achieve that balance, right? Like, that's your choice. Like, you just boiled it down. That's so, like, great and not great, because those are two words that people try to avoid. Like, I don't want to compromise and I don't want to change. So, well, you're doing one or the other right this minute. Like, right?
Pretty much.
You either choose one, or it's chosen for you, right?
Yeah, totally. And even not making a choice is the choice.
Totally. Because that's usually not making a choice means you're going to compromise on something. Because if you're not going to choose to change something, you're going to compromise on something, whether you recognize that or not. But you don't have to live with that, right? You can seek out, you can change any minute. You can decide to make things different or let go of whatever is the story you're telling yourself. But I think a really empowering thing to me that I heard, long ago, and I can't even tell you who told me it, but maybe I read it somewhere. But the idea of rhythm instead of balance, this has saved my whole life, I feel like. So hopefully this sheds some relief on some of you. This concept of, because we can only count on change. We can only count on things shifting throughout our life, right? The different seasons we've talked about, getting new bosses, getting new jobs, moving, having children, and even your children growing, right? Having children is just the beginning of all the shifts that will come from that, because they're babies, and then they're toddlers, and then they're teenagers, and then they're adults, and then they're getting married, and then you have grandkids. Like, even that process is only season to season to season. It's not ever the same thing. So because of the seasons of life, it requires new rhythms as opposed to balance. And again, going back to that definition of, as long as everything important to you has a time and place when it takes priority, then that's your rhythm for that season of your life. And I swear every single year of my life has looked different because of what we're trying to achieve, what has shifted either by choice or by not choice, what we're moving towards. Every year, literally every like actual season of the year sometimes feels very different from the last, so as long as you're if you embrace that term, the rhythm of your day, the rhythm of your life, the rhythm of your season in life, maybe that helps you redefine that whole concept and settle into it a little bit more. Do you look at it in terms of rhythm? I know we've talked about that before.
So I definitely like the concept of, like, there's times where you're in a more active rhythm. There's times when you're in a more passive rhythm. Like, there's like different types of rhythm, and not to take it somewhere totally else, but it was just making me think of, I feel like when we're hoping to move in, like, I don't like my rhythm. I want XYZ rhythm. We expect it to move from like the worse to the better, or we're like, I'm not in balance and I'm just going to move into balance. And I think that the reason why that's probably never happened for anybody is because, in my understanding, you have to get more unbalanced, typically by taking something new on or making some large change, or even the process of like mentally compromising with somebody. Like, it's going to get more out of balance before it can move into a better balance. It's like when you're cleaning your room and it's like, this needs to get cleaned. And then you start cleaning and it's a train wreck and then it gets better. Like, it's not, you don't just go from like, needs to improve to improved. There's this like messy phase in the middle that I feel like people avoid like the plague. And in my experience, in seeking out more balance in the things that I needed to take priority in my life, it's definitely gone through seasons of being specifically less balanced in my definition before it's had the chance to get better.
Totally. Oh, that's so good. I think you're totally right. People desire to step into balance. So they take a step, it gets crazier, and they step right back out going, oh, that's probably not right. It's like, oh no, maybe that's exactly right.
Yep.
Maybe that's exactly the direction that's going to lead you towards more balance. Thank you for that.
That feels like some big red flag, like I'm on the wrong course, instead of like, this is exactly what it looks like to find what you're looking for.
Totally. That's why I've been avoiding spring cleaning, because I'm like, so every time I open a closet, I'm like, good Lord, I need to.
It's summer.
Pull. Yeah. I've avoided it successfully for 2.5 years now. Since I moved here, I've avoided spring cleaning. But I'm like, I open the closet and you're exactly right. I'm like, oh gosh, but then I close the closet because I know in order for me to get that into order, I have to take everything out of the closet. Everything has to come out, and I have to take time, and I have to make choices. What do I want to keep? What do I need to get rid of? And all of that feels, here's the word, overwhelming. And so I'm like, no. But hey, you're exactly right. That's the only way that closet is ever going to get back in order, is if I do that, right? So, oh my gosh, great visual, perfect perfect way to wrap this up, you guys. I hope, again, this is what do we know, right? So it's a little play on words that we like to think we know some things, but we're not silly enough to say that we know all the things. But I do feel like we hit on some really good things here. I hadn't really thought about, really defining that word for myself, and, it'll get worse before it gets better. And just that it's a, what did I say? Not a perception issue, but perception.
No, it is
issue.
a perception
Not
issue.
a perspective issue, a perception issue. It's about your feelings, and feelings don't always. Sometimes feelings do us dirty, right? Like those are not a good.
I don't
compass.
want the feels.
Our feelings are not a good compass for making decisions about our life, because I don't feel like I feel overwhelmed at the thought of that closet, right? That's not a good way to base whether or not I'm ever going to reorganize that closet, because I'm never going to feel good. So it is a perception issue. Why is that hard for my brain to right?
The words are too similar.
They're too similar. And I talk about perspective so much that I just can't even say the word perception. But thank you so much, Holly, for chiming in with your wisdom. I hope baby is,
Thanks, Dean, for sleeping the whole time.
He went back to sleep. See?
I guess I just have to do this every day.
It's so funny. We talked about sleep training last week, and Holly's elbows deep in the sleep train, and it is a struggle bus, right? It's a little bit more unbalanced before you seek this glorious balance on the other side.
That's why I'm doing it. I know it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better, but I want the better for the long term. So.
Totally. Well, thank you for jumping on. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And golly, I never think ahead. My sister's so good at that, but I have no idea what we're talking about next week. Nope, no idea at all, but it'll be awesome, and you should check it out. And if you want to catch our videos, I am behind y'all, but I will get caught up to uploading these videos over to YouTube. But our first 10 are over there. Go check it out. Search when the and sign wit. I don't know. I think Whitney called it. It's like an ampersand. When ampersand wit. That's how you find us on YouTube. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye, Halls.